Today we're going to talk about health insurance, but do not turn off this video, especially if you are somebody who doesn't understand all of the options that we have about getting our own health insurance. There are so many times that getting our own health insurance is necessary or maybe a strong move. Like if you want to leave your job and start your own business, if you have that entrepreneurial spirit, are looking at 1099 jobs, or if you want to work locums, or maybe if you want to go part-time at your position and the hours you're going to be working are not going to let you qualify for your company's health insurance. Or maybe you're looking at a job that has a lot of great things. It's kind of a dream job, but the health insurance that they offer just kind of sucks or is basically non-existent. You may be tempted to turn down that job thinking that there's no way you could afford coverage on your own. Well, the great news is that you do have options, way more options than I think almost all of us realize. I'm interviewing an independent insurance agent who is going to talk about the different options that people have to get healthcare insurance. She's going to talk about how you may be surprised who can actually qualify for marketplace policies with subsidies. Yes, with subsidies, even if your income is on the higher side. But she's also going to tell us about private insurance options and how, surprisingly, sometimes those can be more affordable than a marketplace plan in the right circumstances. Hi, it's Michelle with the Medicine Couch, and I really appreciate you being here today. And normally in this channel, I'm exploring all of the different opportunities that are open to PAs and NPs in and around medicine. And sometimes that means starting your own business or becoming like a 1099 employee. So this video actually kind of supports that mission because I don't want people to give up on opportunities because they think they can't get or afford their own health insurance. If you like what I do in this channel, please hit that subscribe button. And of course, share this video with somebody else that might could use this information.
My name is Julia Tumaniszwili. I'm an independent insurance advisor, and I've been in the health insurance space for about 5 years now. I've helped thousands of people over the years. I'm actually licensed in over 30 states, and I offer a variety of policies. I really love what I do, and I take pride in what I do, especially navigating such a convoluted area. I feel that it's really important to be able to offer peace of mind and as much information as possible when it comes to shopping for a health coverage policy.
I think it's something that a lot of us don't understand, and especially a lot of us don't understand the options for getting health insurance other ways than through our employer. Because I know a lot of people are a little leery about stepping out and doing anything on their own because they think, well, I just will not be able to get health insurance and it will not be affordable. Do you see that happen a lot? And is that a false statement?
That's a very common misconception. What I always tell people is if you're stepping out into a 1099 job, if you're working with the right person, your health insurance policy really should not be affecting your decision or causing any kind of like crazy feelings. There are private insurance policies that are available. There are marketplace plans that are available. There are short-term plans that are available. There are MediShare plans, which is like HealthShare. So there's a ton of different options. It's really just a matter of finding out what your needs are and then tailoring a plan based on that.
Yeah, and so that's where you come in because you're an independent agent, right? And so you are not beholden to any particular path, right? You help people pick what's best for them. But then I know the question comes up. People are like, well, then how do you get paid? Am I paying you a fee? Like, is it costing me extra to work with somebody like you?
It's free to talk to me. So, a lot of times I tell people straight up, I can either help you or I can't. And I'm okay with being the person that's like, look, you're already in the best position and that's free.
Right.
The insurance companies pay me directly. It has nothing to do with the consumer, which is great.
So let's talk about some of those options. And the first one that I want to talk about is one that you hit on because I've heard a lot of people asking about that. And that, I can't remember what you called it, but kind of like the shared, what did you
The
call it?
HealthShare plans.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about those and the pros and cons of those.
HealthShare plans, I'll be honest with you, I don't love them because they aren't considered, it's not considered real health insurance. They're actually not legally obligated to pay any of your claims out. So health shared plans are faith-based organizations is all it is.
Okay.
Basically
Okay.
imagine like a big pot of people who are all within a religion, and they all pay very low premiums, so it can be very glamorous, for somebody who's
Yeah.
looking to save money on their health insurance. They all pay into a pot, and they're all basically in one risk pool. Now, there are board of directors that sit on top, and they ultimately have the say when it comes to whose claims are getting paid and whose claims are not getting paid. So this is why it's either a very hit or miss situation for my clients. It's either they loved it and they covered everything and it was great, or they covered nothing and they were never obligated to do so legally. So my opinion of health shares is it's probably a last case scenario for me. Is I don't usually recommend them unless it's very short term, right? Usually I
Right.
recommend either like a marketplace plan or private coverage, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you are secure in what you're purchasing.
Is an option potentially, but it's just something you really have to know what you're getting into, right? If you're going to go that way.
Absolutely.
So what are the other good options that people have if they need health insurance independently? And are these all for individuals and families or just individuals?
So, yes, a lot of people think that they can't, they're like, oh, what am I going to do about my family? It's very easy when you get your individual plan to insure your family. So, that's not a concern either. I would say the two main ways that I advise for my clients when it comes to purchasing their own individual health insurance is either doing an ACA plan, which is otherwise known as the Marketplace, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, some people call it, or doing a private underwritten plan. At the end of the day, those are going to be the two avenues that are going to give you a max out of pocket. This is why we purchase health insurance, is because we want to secure a max out of pocket. We want to make sure that, God forbid, if something major does happen to me, I'm not going to be financially burdened for the rest of my life.
What are some of the different misconceptions or misunderstandings people may have about buying their health insurance this way?
Yeah, so a lot of the people that I talk to that come off of employer sponsored plans, they usually have very cheap health insurance because their employer is contributing to their premiums each month. So a lot of people think that it's going to be very expensive to get their own health insurance, which is not necessarily always the case. With the public marketplace plans, they actually are based on income. And so a lot of people don't realize that they might qualify for subsidies just based on their income. However, I do work with a lot of high income earners, and this is a major concern because they're like, well, I'm definitely not qualifying for government subsidies. At that point, we can look at private coverage. That's going to be based solely on your health, right? So if you're healthy, you can qualify for lower rates, typically 30 to 40% lower than what they might find on a marketplace plan. And the benefits are quite good if you can qualify. A lot of the healthcare workers that I work with, they are pretty in tune with their health. And so a lot of times people do qualify for those. It really just depends on your situation, what your income is, and how your health looks.
Couple follow-up questions there. So when we're talking about the marketplace, is there a cutoff on income, and is it based on individual, or if like you have a spouse, is it combined income? How does that work?
Yeah, a number of factors affect this. So household size has a big impact. I found that the larger the household size, usually the more you actually qualify for as far as the tax credit goes. And also, the older you are, the more likely you are to qualify for the tax credit. I'll just give you an example. I have a client, I actually just spoke with her. She's a travel nurse. Her and her husband make about 100 grand a year. They're both 27, 28 years old. They're young, they're healthy.
Together or each of them make?
Together. That's what they're
Together?
going to
Okay.
look at. They're going to look at the
Okay.
household income.
Okay.
So together they make about $100,000 a year. They don't qualify for government subsidies on the marketplace. But I also have clients that are in their 50s and they together make the same, about $100,000 a year, and they qualify for huge subsidies.
So even if somebody is making what they think is an income that's going to keep them from qualifying, they still can talk with you and you can just check that, right? You can put in some numbers and you can let them know because they may end up being surprised, is what you're saying, right? Potentially.
Absolutely. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a lot of people that are surprised. I've talked to families that are like, yeah, I make $200,000 a year. There's no way I'm qualifying for subsidies, but they're in their 60s and they have 4 kids, and below and behold, they qualify for large subsidies. And that's always the approach that I take. I like to compare marketplace first, and then if that doesn't work, then we can go on to something else.
And then one last question about the marketplace, and I know no one can predict what's going to happen in the future, but in the industry, are you hearing talk with all of the government cuts? Are we hearing talks about the subsidies coming to an end?
There are a lot of things that are changing under this administration. As far as the Affordable Care Act, I haven't heard a lot about that in particular. I know that people are getting kicked off of Medicaid, and so they probably will be looking for, financial assistance from the marketplace. I know that private insurance policies are changing as well. Short-term plans are probably not going to be offered for longer than a duration of about 3 months. So while
Hmm.
I can see changes being made, I don't know for sure about the marketplace. One
Yeah.
thing I can tell you about the marketplace is the cost goes up every year and the deductibles go up every year. So that's inevitable. The deductibles when I first started in this industry were at, in the $5,000-6,000 range, and they have just gone up since then. Now they're as high as $9,200. And that's because the marketplace, they have to insure everybody no matter what their health conditions are. And so you are in quite a high risk
Yeah.
pool when you're in a marketplace plan. So of course, prices are naturally going to keep rising.
So tell us a little bit more about what you were talking about, the other way, the private way, where you can, I think you were saying that we can actually be kind of looked at as an individual in our health, and that determines how much we pay. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at marketplace, they're insuring everybody no matter what. If you don't qualify for subsidies, it can be expensive. If you do a private insurance policy and they underwrite you based on your health, they look at prescriptions, they look at medical records, that sort of thing. If they see that you're healthy, they're going to put you in a low risk pool. And this is how some of my clients have saved thousands of dollars every year is just for being healthy. Because at the end of the day, you're not really a liability to the insurance company if you are in good health and if you take care of yourself. So I always compare this to what I like to call the safe driver discount. They offer lower rates for safe drivers. And so underwritten plans and insurance companies that do have private coverage where they do have underwriters that are looking at those kinds of things, they are going to give their clients lower rates as, it's incentivizing them to stay healthy.
So if somebody is coming to you and they're pretty healthy, but they don't qualify for subsidies, which you're going to check first because they may be surprised, but if they don't, then they have this other option. How does that premium usually compare to like a subsidized premium through ACA? Like, could they be fairly comparable, or is the underwritten policy always going to be more than a subsidized?
No, not necessarily. So it depends on the state, it depends on the age, the gender. There are a lot of different factors that kind of are collectively contributing to the cost of your health insurance premium each month. But I'll give you an example, actually, my own personal example. I just switched onto a marketplace plan because I found out that I'm pregnant. Surprise.
Yay,
So
congratulations.
I previously had a private health insurance policy that doesn't cover maternity. So I was paying about $350 a month on my private insurance plan. I don't qualify for government subsidies because I'm young, because I make decent money. So I switched off
Yeah.
onto a marketplace policy that does cover maternity. Again, they have to cover everybody no matter what, right? So I switched off onto a marketplace plan. I pay $644 a month for a very comparable policy to what I had on the private market. Both plans have $0 deductibles, the marketplace plan that I have and the private insurance plan that I had. And both are PPOs, one with Blue Cross Blue Shield, one with United Healthcare. To me, it makes sense if you don't have if you're not having a baby, like lots of women, they grow older, they're like, no, I'm done having kids. When you're out of that age, it makes sense to be on a private insurance policy because you're saving thousands of dollars every year. So it truly is going to depend on what the individual's needs are when it comes down to what I'm advising. If somebody calls me
Yeah.
and they tell me that they're pregnant, we're going to an ACA plan. That's the only thing I'm going to advise for them. Now,
Oh,
just a
okay.
side note, there are private insurance policies that do cover maternity, but in my opinion, I think that the marketplace plans are a little bit better compared to what private coverage would offer for those benefits.
I didn't know that that was a thing, that if you had the private, health insurance, it may not cover maternity. But so then does that count as like what they call a qualifying event or something? Like, are you able to switch at any time if something like that comes up?
Yes, typically you have to
Oh,
have a qualifying life event. So that's going to be loss of coverage. Mine personally was I moved. You have to move within a certain time frame. Marriage, divorce, change in household size. Those are going to be your qualifying life events that are going to allow you 60 days to enroll onto a marketplace plan. But if you go private, you don't have to worry about that. You can enroll anytime during the year.
But I was just curious. I was thinking about if you're somebody who's in childbearing years and you are on a private plan that you've gotten underwritten but it doesn't have maternity benefits. And then if you find out that you're pregnant, does that allow you, do you have the flexibility then to change over to a marketplace plan like you did? Or were you only able to do that because you moved?
I was able to do that because I moved. You can also at this point qualify for Medicaid. So what I usually do is I tell my clients, if you don't have a qualifying life event, apply for Medicaid. When you are denied Medicaid, you are then qualified for a special open enrollment period. So there's loopholes. If
Oh,
not,
okay.
you can do a private plan. It's usually more expensive. The benefits aren't as comprehensive as what I would say, the better marketplace plans are.
Yeah.
Networks are usually not as good, but it's an option.
So if somebody is looking at a job that's maybe 1099 or they want to leave and make their own business and they're really concerned about the health insurance aspect and they want to make sure that's all buttoned up and they're covered from the day they leave their employer, how long in advance should people plan for that and when does that have to be taken out?
So I would say if you are wanting to become 1099 or get your own health insurance policy, the sooner the better. You want to be on top of it because there are going to be hundreds, most of the time, hundreds of different plans that you're going to be choosing from. And a lot of people don't think about that. They're like, oh, again, my options are so limited. I'll just
Yeah.
worry about this at the last minute, which is something that I would do. But it's
I've done that a time or two.
it's better to be prepared. So I would say the sooner the better, but no later than 1 month in advance because the
Okay.
next billing cycle usually comes the following month on the 1st or the 15th.
What kind of documents and information did they need to kind of get together to be prepared?
I would say the number one most important thing that people need to have ready is what their estimated income is going to be. And I know that this can be a tricky area for people who are 1099 because we don't know what we're going to make at the end of the year,
Sure.
but it needs to be as close as possible because if I do a marketplace plan for you and your income is off, there can be tax penalties associated with that. That's the number one thing. I would say the second thing next to that would be your providers because we're going to plug them in and make sure that they're within the network and just basic demographic information, name, height and weight, date of birth, street address, things like that.
Yeah, and that was something that I learned going through my health insurance agent is because he would always ask me that question, like, so what's your, every year, like, what's your estimated income this year? And I'm like, I have no
I
freaking
know.
clue.
I hear that
and
all the time.
so just so people know, like if you're not sure, especially if you're starting a newer business and things, then you can estimate and you can update that as the year goes
Mhm.
by. If it looks like you're going to be making more money, you can update that and it would change your premium a little bit, right? But then you wouldn't have penalties at the end of the year. Is that right?
Correct. As long as
Yeah.
you are, on top of it and you're updating your income, you should be okay. But don't be the person that waits until the end of the year and that gets hit with a huge tax bill because that is never a good thing.
Yeah, and when you said there's hundreds of options available, again, my mind just kind of short circuit a little bit because I'm used to looking at the marketplace and I think, God, there's just not a great plan for me because I'm healthy and I
Mhm.
don't use the insurance much, but I also don't want to have a $10,000 deductible in case I had to go into the hospital or something. And I just
Mhm.
don't ever see the right option for me. So you're saying that people can talk to you and you can help them. You don't have to go through thousands of plans that there are. You kind of know the ones that might could fit their situation and you just kind of guide them.
Absolutely. Once I can narrow down number one, how much you're going to use the health coverage, what your intentions are for using your health insurance. If it's somebody like you, Michelle, and you're like, well, I just want to make sure that I'm protected in case something major happens to me, that's going to narrow down the options quite a bit. If it's somebody that does have higher health coverage needs and, let's say they have some major pre-existing condition or some chronic illness, that's a totally different ball game. That's going to put us into a
Yeah.
different category of what to look for when they're looking for the plan.
If somebody unfortunately does have lots of health concerns and they are working for employer and they've got employer health insurance and they're looking at going 1099 or entrepreneur type route and need to get their own health insurance, at that point, do you think it really becomes astronomically prohibitive cost-wise if they don't have that employer plans, or are there still options for people who unfortunately have a lot of health concerns?
It depends on the plan. So in the health insurance space, the premiums and the deductibles are going to have this sort of inversely related relationship, right? So the lower the premium, the higher the deductible, the lower premium, right? For people who do have major pre-existing conditions, it's really not the end of the world for them to be on a high deductible plan, because most of the time on a marketplace plan, which is what I would recommend, you're not far off from hitting your max out of pocket after you
Yeah.
have already paid into your deductible. So it's really not the end of the world. However, it starts to get a little bit trickier if they do have like expensive prescriptions, if they have to go for, scans, major treatments like chemotherapy, insulin dependency. It can become costly on the marketplace for those individuals. But that's what I recommend. Private insurance, there are different limitations, and it would probably be unlikely that they would get qualified for a private insurance policy anyway.
Mm,
But
yeah.
again, it's really just a matter of working with somebody who can inform you and give you several different options and advise you based on what your needs are.
It gets tricky when you're looking at, like you said, the deductible and the max out of pocket, and then trying to compare like copays to figure out like really what is the best thing for me, like what's going to make the most sense, and am I missing something that's going to be terrible if something major happens? So I assume that you can help people understand the right ratios there as well, right? Or am I the only one that
Absolutely.
struggles with that?
No, you and probably 90% of America struggle with trying to find the right fit. I
Yeah.
have people that go on a marketplace plan just for certain things. For example, people that might need rehab or something like that, and they're only looking for coverage for rehab. They're otherwise healthy. And so
Right.
it's getting into the nitty gritty of an individual's specific needs at that point, and finding a plan that would give them an affordable copay or something like that for a specific service.
I highly recommended working with an independent insurance agent. I have liked it for the ability just to ask like these questions, like we're having this interview. But if people want to just talk about health insurance and figuring out what's right for them, meeting with an independent agent is always great, whether it's Julia or somebody else. But I really think that she cares about what's right for people and works a lot with healthcare providers, and so understands the whole travel thing. So, having said that, if people want to work with you, Julia, tell people how they can find you.
So you can book with me on my Calendly link. It's going to be available down below. What I'll do is I'll put a link for the medicine couch specifically. So if you saw this video and your referral was from Michelle's channel, make sure that you click that link and book with me there. You can also reach me on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and my website is premierhealthadvising.com. Just make sure that you definitely refer to Michelle's channel whenever we talk.
Yeah, that'd be helpful to let Julia know where that you found the information from, and helpful for me as well. So I will have, like she said, I'll have that link down below, plus the link to her website and all that good stuff. Okay, well, this has been great. I mean, health insurance isn't always the most exciting topic, but it's certainly definitely something that people need. And it's great to know that people can come to you and get kind of like some personal advice and some help figuring out what's best for them and their family. So thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, Michelle.
I hope that this video helped you understand and appreciate that you do have options, or at least that you can go talk to somebody and find out if what you want to do is possible and what it's actually going to cost you. It's always better to find out the information than to just sit there and think it's not possible. If you've been wondering, like, what are some of the entrepreneurial opportunities available to PAs and NPs, then check out this playlist here.